So I watched that Hoppers trailer. I didn't give a then I guess at the same time I'm not 9 years old, and maybe that's the point. I thought the animation, particularly for the animals, was pretty good. So I don't really like the humans so much, but I also think they actually have a more interesting message than some of the low-hanging fruit they've been tackling in recent films. I just basically want to know, were Pixar actually making better movies before, or was I just a kid before and I'm being nostalgic, right? Ratatouille is one of my favorites, if not it's in my letterbox top 4 movies of all time. If we look at like the 5 most recent animated kids films I've seen in the last few years, it goes The Wild Robot, which I gave 3 stars. I acknowledge the animation is good, the music's good, but I wasn't massively invested in the story or any of the characters. Next most recent film I saw was Inside Out 2, which I gave 1.5 stars. Ooh, it's a hot take. It obviously isn't as bad as a 1.5, but I just was painfully bored, and quite frankly I'm kind of over Pixar's overt needs to kind of have these forced moments where I'm meant to cry, and I feel like some of the films are pretty hollow outside of just trying to do that. It's not that I couldn't relate to the themes of this movie, more so than I just thought everything was so basic and ground level, and yet people was acting like it was the most profound thing ever. It's a kids movie, sure. I don't care about the visual representation they have for Riley's mind. I don't care about Riley in general. I think she's just kind of painfully boring, and she's our main character. The next most recent film was Across the Spider-Verse, which I gave 5 stars, of which I only have 6 5-star movies on Letterboxd. One of the best openings to a film I've ever seen. Every frame a painting, a tremendous soundtrack, a growing threat in the villain. I have 0 issue with it being a part 1. I never cared the first time I saw it. The only reason I didn't give it a 5 star after the first time I saw it was just time, and time has passed and it's undeniable. 4th most recent film I've seen, Puss in Boots. I thought Puss in Boots was just brilliant. I thought the end was slightly anticlimactic, but the film obviously looked sensational. I cared deeply about everyone in the film, even the weird side characters that I shouldn't care about. And the villain was just so refreshingly mean. They brought glowing eyes back, Thunderbolts, Sinners, Dankeschön. And then the 5th most recent animated film I've seen was Turning Red, which I gave 2.5 stars. Look, I don't remember having many problems with it story-wise. I like that it was like a weird concept. I thought it felt very Pixar in that way. I didn't love the animation style in this one particularly, and I wasn't crazy invested. 2.5, So like a truly sprawling list with a 1.5, 2.5, 3, 4, and 5-star rating across the last 5 films. If your criticisms are you're not invested, you think the message is too basic, and having to justify all of your negative points by saying, well, I guess it is a kids film, probably shows that maybe you're growing out of kids films. Also, the fact that these are the last 5 films I've seen most recently. I mean, think about all the films I didn't just mention and that I've chosen to miss. I mean, in the last few years we've had Elio, Bad Guys 1 and 2, Moana 2, Transformers 1, the Super Mario Bros movie, Elemental, Mutant Mayhem, Wish, Lightyear, Mitchells vs. the Machines, and onward. 4 of those films are Pixar movies. I have no idea if any of those are good or bad, but the point is I didn't see them, and I feel like maybe a younger version of me would have. So clearly I cannot, at the very least, dispute that my interest in animated kids family movies has gone down. But has it gone down through aging, or has it just gone down through quality has got worse? I've clearly shown that if it's good, if you build it, they will come. I was going to say I will come, but that could have been, misconstrued. Let's stay focused on Pixar though. If we look at their first 5 original movies compared to their last 5 original movies, Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, and The Incredibles going up against Elio, Elemental, Turning Red, Luca, and Soul. I clearly picked the first 5. I think all of you clearly picked the first 5. Obviously, that could be all of us dealing with nostalgia. Sure. So I hopped onto YouTube and I was just looking for tier list videos. I wanted to see videos, people who didn't grow up with some of these films that we did, that we're incredibly nostalgic about, or just adults who maybe watched all these films later on in life, because I wanted to see opinions of people who didn't watch Toy Story in the early 2000s, who didn't watch The Incredibles in the early 2000s, who didn't watch all these films ages ago, and therefore have sat and lived with them, and now it's just an impossible mountain for these new Pixar films to climb. And I have to say, from doing that, it's very similar than what you'd expect to see today from people. I mean, you always see The Incredibles, Monsters Inc. near the top. You typically see Brave, The Good Dinosaur, Turning Red near the bottom, or something I noticed. And surprisingly, Cars 2 a lot higher than you'd think. That was the main anomaly, but everything else I noticed was pretty similar. So I don't think it's just a nostalgic thing. I think we can say those first films were better. Okay, why is that? I think they're clearly a good company. I think effort is clearly going into most of these films, but there's just a certain special sauce is missing. Did they just have lightning in a bottle in the early days that they haven't quite been able to recapture? They had just incredibly crafted stories like Monsters Inc., Ratatouille, Up. They had huge fan favorites that became massive franchises like Toy Story and Cars. And even in their more like basic ventures like The Incredibles is a lot of people's favorite animated movie, favorite superhero movie, favorite Pixar movie, favorite whatever movie of all time. So they were just hitting on all fronts. Let's just look through all of these films. I think Toy Story to Inside Out acts not only as a good bracket for where most of people's favorite Pixar films lie, but also the exact halfway point, which is kind of weird. I think Inside Out is their 15th movie, and I think Hopper's coming out in March will be their 30th movie. So that's kind of crazy how that just works. The directors leading from their first to 15th movie, in order of the number of projects they did, go Mark Andrews for Brave, Brenda Chapman for Brave, Lee Unkrich for Toy Story 3, Dan Scanlon, Monsters University, Andrew Stanton, Finding Nemo and WALL-E, Brad Bird, The Incredibles and Ratatouille, Pete Docter, Monsters Inc., Up and Inside Out, and John Lasseter, Toy Story, A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Cars and Cars 2. And then in the back half, Josh Cooley, Toy Story 4, Kelsey Mann, Inside Out 2, Angus MacLean, Lightyear, Eric Casarosa, Luca, Brad Bird, Incredibles 2, Pete Docter, Soul, Dan Scanlon, Onward, Lee Unkrich, Coco, Brian Fee, Cars 3, Andrew Stanton, Finding Dory, Adeline Sharafian, Elio, Adrian Molina, Elio, Daniel Chong, Hoppers, Domi Shi, Turning Red and Elio, Peter Son, The Good Dinosaur and Elemental. Right, 8 different main directors in the first 15 and 15 different main directors in the second 15. The first half had its hitter directors in Pete Docter, John Lasseter, Brad Bird, and I'd even say Andrew Stanton from what I've seen here. They all combined to deliver 12 of the first 15 Pixar movies. And apart from John Lasseter, to be fair, they all did carry on in the second half and direct movies there. Although the sequels of Finding Dory and Incredibles 2 aren't exactly something to phone home about. I think we haven't seen enough of those early names in this second half, and naturally, we've not seen the same magic. And when you look at a lot of these early Pixar classics, not only did these directors direct a lot of these movies, they was involved in the story, you know, the screenplay, and not only of their own movies, but a lot of the other classics. They was all working on each other's movies together. They just had something going on. That's actually, I think, one positive for Hopper's coming up is that Daniel Chong is working on everything across the board. He's got all his fingers in all the pies. 3 of the next 4 upcoming Pixar films will all be sequels: Toy Story 5, Incredibles 3, and Coco 2. And yeah, I've clearly lost interest with age, seeing less and less animated kids movies, and my threshold has gone up because I recognize that people like Inside Out too. But at the same time, Pixar used to push the needle with their stories, with their animation, but now I think other studios are just doing that for me in the animated space that Pixar just can't match up to. I feel like Pixar are a bit of a company clinging on to these Pixar moments with an animation style that's fallen out of favor a little bit maybe, and I think their stories only really scratch the surface a lot of times in terms of their themes. That's just me. The thing that almost made Pixar so special is now what's kind of trapping them. You know, they had lightning in a bottle, but now we're just trapped in this bottle, and I feel like other studios just have the ability to just sort of create things that Pixar kind of can't quite reach anymore, and they don't really feel like the guys on the frontier anymore. You know, kids growing up now, their favorite films will be from probably different animation studios. So have Pixar gone down? Have I grown up? Bit of both.